Issue 72. We start out with Sonic complaining to Nate that all he sees in his invention is a screen full of static, even though the screen doesn't have static on it at all, but instead, oh, it's the title of the comic. Why the hell would you put it there? Just have the whole screen be static and the credits list and stuff be at the bottom. Not a good idea to put it there since Sonic just said he saw static and nothing but on the screen. It pulls you out of the immersion. Nate explains that this telecrate requires a broadcast to be sent before it can show anything other than static. Also, this is the first time we've got a whole issue with Green-Eyed Sonic. I feel like I've passed a milestone and entered a new era in the Sonic comic. It's always good to keep having big changes to the status quo, like Robotnik being defeated or a very minor redesign or something, so that you keep a feeling of progress with the overall comic, rather than it being stagnant and stale, staying in the same Unleashed adaptation for 6 years. Anyways, Sonic reveals that it wasn't just Nate, but also Rotor who made this TV, which is good because I was just starting to notice how they were using Nate's inventing skills as if Chuck and Rotor didn't already exist. The TV thing was built from combining leftover tech of Eggmans with a batch of rings, and it took over 2 weeks to make a telecrate for every home and not home in the city so that all the citizens would be able to see the King's address to them later in the evening. Wait, so if that's just a normal TV, and a very primitive looking one at that, you'd think a brilliant scientist like Nate would be able to make an HD one. Why the hell are they making such a big deal out of this regular mundanity with Sonic acting like he's never seen a TV before? Didn't Nate get the Acorn Kingdom out of the Middle Ages? Not to mention there were several mentions to and showings of a TV in the Freedom Fighters base earlier, like the time Sally was crying at a soap opera and then she switched to news. Not to mention Sonic talked about Jurassic Park. So why is this TV such a big deal? Why don't they just call it a TV, not a telecrate? Even Sally doesn't know what her dad has to say, which makes sense since if word got out beforehand it would ruin the surprise. Rotor then says that now that his work with Nate is over, he figured now was the time to go searching for his parents, and the last time he saw them, they were being mind-controlled up in the Arctic. Oh, so the southern continent gets its own special name of the Southern Tundra, but the Arctic? No, it's the Arctic. Also, I guess the city's been fully rebuilt now. About time. Everyone starts talking at once, which is rare for a comic, saying that they totally forgot about that. I don't blame them. And Amy and Sally hug him, with Sally looking more solemn as if she's worried about his safety. Maybe she can't send Sonic to protect him because it's bad enough there will be one person gone and she needs a hero around to protect the city, especially since she just got him back. So naturally she'll be worried with him being alone. I'm glad they're finally addressing and wrapping up that plot point. I thought for sure they never resolve it, since nobody really cares that much about Rotor. I really could have taken or left him finding his parents though. Oh, the king calls Nate his uncle. That's nice of him. Makes sense since Nate used to bounce him on his knee when he was a kid. Even Elise doesn't know what the king's about to say? I thought he was his right-hand man. Now I'm getting worried. Well, turns out the king's just gonna tell the public about the queen being in a coma and of Sonic and Tails' success in defeating Ixisnagus. The latter of which you'd expect would just be assumed since they're both back from their trip to do exactly that. But I guess with him delivering the bad news unnecessarily, he needs any morale booster he can get to counteract it. While I was bored at his long-winded speech taking forever to get to the actual point, I actually burst out laughing at seeing General Kodos of all people watching the broadcast on his bed with a beer looking forward, thinking, I had Uma steal one of these boxes for this? You gotta be kidding! I was giggling a lot at that. That was unexpected. Especially the fact that he looks just like any other normal person doing this. A rare villains out shopping scenario. And of course he can't just change the channel because it is an emergency broadcast after all. It'd be taking over all of the channels. He's annoyed while the king is saying that although the city has been cleaned up outwardly, Robotnik's factories have affected the ecosystem on a far deeper level, and it'll take a while to have the planet fully recovered from it. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately because his main points were pointless and his speech was boring, the final one of a group of satellites which haven't been taken down by Mobotropolis for some reason gets activated and brings to the TV screens instead the biography of Robotnik, obviously made by him. I hope it's not too full-lived so that I can get some actual true information out of it. I actually laughed at the line, in the year, well, let's not discuss what year it was, because it was surprising seeing that even Robotnik could get embarrassed and cheapish at how old he is. I like this. It's nice to get more of a proper backstory for him. But this is dozens of issues after he's disappeared. This is like Pokemon Sun and Moon only bothering to tell you the villain's motivation with an easily missable throwaway line from the NBC in the post-game. Or Gen 4 only telling you why Cyrus was evil if you happen to talk to his grandfather after he's disappeared. Robotnik was the only son of the Kintobar clan to be smart. Also, he had an annoying brother named Colin. It's interesting to see that the Overlanders still call their families clan, as if they put a lot of importance in what family was from still. Then, oh great, fucking hell, they skip over any sort of possible motivation for why he had become evil. No mention of his parents sucking and raising him wrong. Instead, we just cut straight to him being Nate's assistant, and people being surprised at Nate because I guess that was supposed to be a secret. If you're just gonna tell us stuff we already know, don't fucking have a bunch of exposition about his backstory then. I did think his line was funny though. Began the greatest war ever seen. I forget the name of it. His lines in general were pretty funny so far. Funnier than they've ever been. Also, he shows racism towards the Mobians once again, but that's expected of him at this point. Oh good, some new information. Just not the kind I wanted to have. The Ministry of Conflict called upon every genius in Megapolis to devise weapons of mass destruction. And Eggman created the Ultimate Annihilator. Wait, this early? Fortunately, he never got the mineral ore to actually create this weapon, because his brother, now the Minister of Justice, punished him for his efforts, obviously disapproving of using his own people as test subjects for the gadget. Only 10 years imprisonment? For that? If they just executed him, a lot of horrible stuff could have been avoided. That's a very common accidental S-up this comic has. Well, it doesn't matter how short his prison sentence was because he escaped to the Mobian Badlands. Then we get some more worthless recap. Robotnik snarks that the king practically handed over control of his kingdom to him upon meeting him, which shocked the king. And that was pretty funny too. As was an amusing line where Robotnik called Kodos that washed-up warlord. Why did he think that though? Just because he's not him? Why didn't he respect him? I thought Kodos was his old mentor, that's what I remember. Kodos was ordered to instruct him in the art of warfare, so he was his mentor, despite being a Mobian. Robotnik then bragged that he replaced Kodos after learning everything he had to teach, and we see him being sentenced to his own silence. Oh, it was Robotnik that sent him there. As he brags that, go ahead and ask yourselves, wasn't he the best man for the job? I burst out laughing again at Kodos' reaction here. Wow, this is the best Eggman's dialogue that's ever been written so far. I'm actually enjoying it, even if he is still in desperate need of a proper excuse for his outlandish actions and desires. Oh good, it's explained where Snively comes in. Days after Robotnik was put in charge of the army, his dimwit, Snively, arrived to pledge his allegiance to him. I'm happy for Chuck here, as the footage here reveals once and for all that Eggman indeed did sabotage the roboticizer he made, and that it was supposed to help cure the wounded. On that morning, more than a decade ago, a huge metal flagship forever altered the Mobotropolis skyline, and Robotnik claims responsibility for ushering in a new industrial age, even though that was Nate's doing, not his. It was nice as Sally put her hand on her father's shoulder to reassure him when we saw him being thrown into his own asylum being called to tradition adhering. The real sting of it is that he's right. The king is to tradition adhering. Now. What? Robotnik's revisionist history here. He tries to say that the other Mobians willingly volunteered themselves to become robots, or as he put it, undergo the changes needed to work in his posh factories, as if they actually needed those changes. I hope the non-Robians won't buy this, because that's the last thing the Robians need. Why would Eggman feel the need to lie about this? I thought he got joy out of making people suffer from turning into robots. But here he seems to be expressing a subconscious desire for people to enjoy it. Oh, that's a shame. I thought we'd get a reaction shot of the Mobians and Robians to that lie, but instead we go on with the recap. Good, some new information. Robotnik had found the Overlander city of Megapolis entirely deserted, because the people were probably smart enough to decide to hide. Why didn't any other country do that, though? It's a good thing, too, because he had a whole army of SWAT to attack them with. Where did they go, though? Wouldn't Robotnik know, since he's an Overlander too? Or was. I mean, I guess he wouldn't know, because he's separated from them. Then we go straight into full-on worthless recap mode as we start recapping stuff we already know from previous issues, like Eve. Wait a minute, not only does he call it an alternate future because he's delusional, thinks he'll never be defeated, but how did he get this footage? Seriously, how? Did he stage it? Because I never saw him tell Robo-Robotnik, "Hey dude, can I borrow some of your camera footage? I want to put it in my biography for self-aggrandizement." Wait, what the fuck? The biography actually knew how Robotnik died? And also knew to lie that he sacrificed his own life protecting the planet from evil. It's implied that this was made by robotic satellite of Eggman's, K-Bot. So it must have been K-Bot's lie and not Robotnik thinking to make that lie and report on his own death after the fact. At least that's what I thought at the time. Sal even called Sonic on his wrist phone that hasn't been seen since the issue where Sonic met Scourge. It says that a glitch in the Robotech used to make the TVs would explain why the pirate broadcast could have been made. She says this while seemingly standing in front of a green portal to Zone of Silence with Sonic in it, or no, it's just the weird art thing separating them. Then Sonic's parents ask him what's the matter, and he says that over the last few weeks, "I've been thinking to myself that it's kind of lame not being a freedom fighter anymore, especially when Sally told me that we'd have to start school again. But now I'm actually glad there's peace." Now? That came out of nowhere. It doesn't make sense that he'd have to start school again with the biggest main villain gone. He'll have a lot to catch up on, as will everyone else. So what, will he have to go back to elementary school because he never got to high school yet? He then says another pretty good line. "I guess I got so used to being Robotnik's enemy that somewhere along the way I forgot how to be your son." And with that, Sonic's parents hug him with awkward silted lines, while Sonic still has skin-colored eyelids in his modern design for some reason. That doesn't look good. And then the story ends with one hell of a cliffhanger, as a shadow Robotnik sneaks up behind Snively and brands him a traitor for causing his uncle's demise. And I share a sentiment a little, but I guess I was missing having an Eggman around thanks to those Sonic Super Specials with him in it. The thing is, that what made the peacetime arc so brilliant was that you never knew what was going to happen next. With Eggman around, it's so predictable. Every story is about another bullshit invention of his that would have made more sense if it had been conjured up by a wizard, which granted gives structure to the comic, but can also make things too episodic and feeling pointless from no sense of proper progress. And now we seem to be going a huge step backwards after all that progress, getting him back. Although Mobotropolis has been restored and the Robians of it have their free will again, so in the end, most of that progress has still remained. But in the peacetime arc, you never knew what was going to happen in the next issue, especially before Ixis, Kodos, and Uma were released. Even on the way to Ixis Nagas, every issue story was a surprise, as you never knew what part of the world was going to be introduced next. It made me even more excited to read the next issue. Now with Eggman back, we're back to predictability again. I can't wait to see what the explanation is for this,
Because if he can just come back from the dead, I have to ask what took him so long.
And then we have the backup story, which continues talking about the history of Mobotropolis after it was founded. Apparently, contact with the mysterious Overlanders was very rare, but often benign. Really? I thought based on the portrayal as barbaric cavemen that the writer of this historical account had a huge bias against them. Since there's no way he could have possibly known they were vicious, since all the historical records were destroyed by Days of Fury. All this stopped when Prince Emerson met a young Overlander boy across the river. Their interaction was friendly, as I wonder why he didn't recognize a prince from the news or something, until the human mentioned he had come here to do some target shooting, which for some reason the prince had never heard of. Even though caveman had to do hunting to survive, and hunter-gatherers still existed up to modern times, as that tribe of jungle apes that kidnapped Sonic and Rotor proved. So why is target shooting so surprising to him? Surprisingly, the prince actually liked the idea of this target shooting and wanted to try it himself instead of being a hippie and hating it immediately like I'd expect of Mobians to. I can perfectly accept realistic guns when a human is holding them, so I see no real problem with content here, especially since it's shown that the Mobian is totally unfamiliar with it. Unfortunately, things take a turn for the grim when the prince idiotically decides to sacrifice his life for a mere bird. This is more making a fool out of him than tragic. I was really supposed to take this seriously? For some reason, the king didn't seek vengeance for the death of his son to an Overlander, which I really can't understand, but he did at least forbid any contact with the people, and the story ends by explaining that this is why the Mobians avoid the use of gun-like weapons. Bullshit! Absolute bullshit! If guns were banned, then why was Ebony using them? And we've seen ray guns, as in gun-like weapons, all the time with Rotor and whatnot. And you can't tell me they're less dangerous than guns. What a delusional writer. Then the librarian explains to Amy and Tails that the king's policy is what led to even greater misunderstanding between humans and Mobians, leading to decades of war. the Great War. The main story was written by Carl Bullers and had the satellite activate and be used for its intended purpose, which was that it was a robot designed to make a biography of Eggman and broadcast it after his death. Although it sure took its sweet time to do so, because by the time he finally did, Eggman showed up in the biggest cliffhanger of the comic. The biography was pretty funny. I actually laughed at some of Robotnik's recorded lines in it. And Kodos' reaction shot was pretty funny too. I really wasn't expecting to see him sitting in bed watching the broadcast like a normal person. And the backup story was by Ken Penders, explaining the indirect cause of the Great War as the king forbidding any contact with the humans after the death of his son from one. I gotta commend on actually surprising me by not having the prince get immediately outraged at the idea of the target shooting right away, and having the contact start out pretty pleasant. But I call bullshit on the king never seeking vengeance on the one who did it, despite clearly seeing him. And the statement that Mobians avoid the use of gun-like weapons, even though they don't, was pretty stupid. And the prince did the stupidest sacrifice of anyone on the face of the earth. I was expecting him to push the human boy down, or for his shouting no to make him not pull the trigger in time. He didn't have to jump out in front of him, and his life was clearly way more valuable than mere birds. That's not courageous, that's stupid. Also, how the hell did the person writing the story know what happened? The king couldn't have possibly known about his sacrifice, and the boy was the only witness. But he didn't seek vengeance against them, so he couldn't have interrogated him about it. The only one who could have possibly written the story was him, and somehow I don't think that was the case. Next up, we're finally back to Knuckles' comic from issues 22 to 25. So it looks like the resolution to the big cliffhanger is going to have to wait.